I have a goal to beat this game every single week in a solo challenge using every single entry from the Pokedex. That's right, all 151 Pokemon will get a feature within this little series of mine. And as you could tell by the impeccable, absolutely flawless, no notes rendition of the Psyduck from the anime series, we are today talking about Psyduck. Now, Psyduck is a Pokemon that I feel pretty good about. One of the big problems, of course, is something that we see a lot of the time across the board of any Pokemon that might have a good typing or even have a decent move pool, but is a pre-evolution Pokemon, a base Pokemon, usually just has a lot of issues in terms of just stats. Like overall, the power, the sheer force that the Pokemon has is what lacks, and so therefore you kind of have to do a lot more training in order to survive some of the hits later, because as you can see, we didn't survive our first battle. Now, to some extent, I guess that's just because of the fact that we only have the move of Scratch to begin with, but our opponent does have the option to throw the battle using things like Tail Whip and, giving us extra time to attack, but sometimes it just kind of goes that way, right? If you look at these stats, everything is pretty even. HP is at 20, then attack at 10, special at 10. So those two so far are remaining in line with one another. Defense and speed, both 11. So, everything is pretty much right together. And in fact, the crit rate is 10.55, which is effectively halfway between 10 and 11. And the 20 that you get for HP comes from the fact that it's not going to be until level 28 to get the next move in the move pool here. That's a stretch, and that's not even a thing, but it's what I'm going with. Now, if you look at that move pool on the right-hand side of the screen, since I've now kind of alluded to it, the move pool is interesting, right? As a water Pokemon, I feel pretty good. I feel like we're going to have some pretty good chances of getting a decent time with this Pokemon. However, there are going to be some setbacks. Surprise, right? It's a Generation 1 game. Of course, there's going to be setbacks for everybody, or at least for most of them. But when you look at it right at the front of it, let's take a look at just the moves that you can learn by leveling up. There is a single water type move, and it is at level 52. And that move is Hydro Pump, which does do a lot of damage, but the PP is small and the accuracy is not great. Although if you're Lance, it hits basically every time. Now, the biggest issue that we face with that, though, is the fact that you'll see that the next move after this Scratch that we start with is Tail Whip, like I alluded to earlier. That's at level 28. Far past the time that we will be at Brock's gym, and there's no way to get a water type move before Brock. That's right, we are once again in that sort of bottleneck that happens here in the beginning of the game, where if you don't have a move that is decent, even if you're a strong Pokemon, if you don't have a decent move, you're going to have to do some kind of grinding just to get to some sort of comparable level to defeat Brock. So it means that we're going to once again have a time where it goes, okay, if you could take out the first 20, 30, whatever minutes of the video, then we'd have a pretty good time that I'd feel good with. We are at that stage with Psyduck, which is unfortunate because it's a mono type water, which, not necessarily all that special, right? But the fact that we learn Confusion, and again, no water gun, no bubble beam, wild to me. But we have Confusion, so we'll have a Psychic type in there. We're going to have some ice moves that we can learn later on. We've got the ability to use Dig, which feels pretty crazy to me. I feel like a duck is not really known for digging. But, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to let them give it to me because Dig is a great move to use in Generation 1. And honestly, it's just so good because there's so many poison type Pokemon. Like earlier when I said it's good, I meant because it's just a strong move, but here I mean it is just there's so many Pokemon that it's useful against. So it's kind of a double whammy, a 2-hit or whatever. It's also a 2-turn move, but that doesn't really, in my opinion, add an insane amount of time to your run unless you're spamming that move nonstop. Now, with Psyduck, the other things really to consider is just the fact that there's a lot of normal type moves that we will not be seeing or using, which are fine. I feel like that happens with a lot of these Gen 1 Pokemon, so nothing new there, nothing lost, nothing gained. But it is the fact that we really have such a bad move pool just by leveling up that everything that we're going to use today is basically going to be something that we learn at the hands of a TM. Now, you'll also probably recognize that I'm showing some of the grinding here. I did cut a little bit here, and we're going to end up having another cut in a minute. But I did want one last moment to sort of, not soapbox, but definitely to talk about something that I think is very important to the solo challenges and the way that I am starting to compartmentalize and starting to look at some of this data and everything like that of like how I'm going to start analyzing these things in a sort of public sense. I know that a couple times I've had people ask for a tier list or some sort of like ranking of putting up the times or just maybe overall like the vibes of like, you know, how much it is like an enjoyable run, things like that. I think that both of those are pretty interesting. I think that there are so many people that are speedrunners that are way above my station that I feel like it makes sense that maybe I could do something that's a little different. Like just saying, hey, even though this is a good Pokemon, like they got a good time, I didn't really have fun with it because of X, Y, and Z, right? But I think that when it comes to these little guys, you know, or even once we do start doing the speed runs, I actually think that there's a crucial change that I would like to implement to how at least I look at solo challenges. Obviously, I can't make anyone else follow my own idea or whatever, but I sometimes look at these things and I think it's very interesting when you look at people do these solo challenge runs. And yes, a couple of times here and there, you will see a pre-evolution, a base Pokemon kind of somewhere randomly like near the top, right? And I feel like it's shocking sometimes, but it's one of those things where maybe they have like a perfect learn set or whatever. And it's just kind of, there's something that is there that just goes, yeah, this makes sense. They're going to just cruise right through it, right? But I actually think that there's a little bit of a disservice in putting a Pokemon like Psyduck up against a Dragonite, right? Not only are the move pools drastically different, but just the overall power of these Pokemon are so drastically different. There's for sure no way that Psyduck is going to have a time that feels like good, you know what I mean? So I feel like one of the things that I want to start doing is when I start making my tier lists, I'm going to have to figure something out for the middle evolution Pokemon, you know, your Ivysaurs, your Poliwhirls, right? Something about those middle Pokemon will have to be sort of figured out. Maybe it'll be like a, oh, hey, they were good enough for this type of thing, but pretty low, but they would actually be on this tier list. They would be one of the strongest, right? You know, maybe you can kind of look at it in that sense. But I do desperately think that there should be a tier list of the sort of worse runs versus the better runs. The ones where you're going, hey, this one is a little bit more of just a challenge of can I do it? And, you know, again, if I do start doing a speed run type situation, then when I go back to do a Pokemon like Ekans, I would use Mimic. There's frequently times where I get really, really bad times with some Pokemon, but it's also that thing of I go, I don't need Mimic. I know that it's doable. Is it going to be extremely difficult? Yes, of course it is. But that doesn't mean that I can't do it. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is not a perfect situation. I don't have it all figured out, but I'll keep you apprised to it as we go. And speaking of as we go, we are currently finally at 32-ish minutes. We are finally at Brock's Gym at level 19. Now, I did sort of look at this at one point and think maybe I can do this at level 18, but I did think that level 20 was going to be the safest bet. Around here, when I realized that I was almost at level 19, I figured now we can go up against a junior trainer because we couldn't do level grinding against him earlier. I only have scratched, so there was no way to guarantee that I would pass out every time. I was going to end up killing that Sandshrew and just, you know, then we were going to be out of luck. So I got us to just under 19, then fought the junior trainer, which took us to level 19. That splits the difference between the risky run and the what I thought was comfortable. And would you look at that, I was correct. With 4 health left, I beat Brock on my first try. And I realize that that's not always a feat, but you know, when you only have Scratch, that feels pretty good. And so 32 minutes in, we are now moving on to Mount Moon. Oh, okay. A Zubat that should be repelled, but is not. So we defeat that, and then I'm going to pick up the TM for Water Gun here. Just wanted to showcase that I'm using it and that I've picked it up, because then I do want to also showcase what it should have gone like much earlier and much faster at Brock's if they had just given me a water move. Look at that. We would have been here 18 minutes, 28 minutes, 30 minutes earlier, I would imagine. Anyway, so now at this point we have moved on to Cerulean. We are going to pick up the rare candy. I always like to showcase that hidden one because I'm not sure if everyone knows that that's there. And then we're going to move on to the rival. This is a chance for us to get some experience and to move past in the storyline, but also just to sort of see how much Psyduck needs to be kind of over-leveled in comparison to some of the more problematic trainers. Sometimes with like the stronger Pokemon, we are right on their level, sometimes actually a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit higher. It really kind of ebbs and flows depending on the portion of the game that we're in. But with the kind of pre-evolution Pokemon, sometimes you have to be pretty far above, you know, the rival's level in order to beat him. But at just a few above, Psyduck can actually get through pretty easily. That was pretty solid, actually. I didn't really feel like we were in danger. Maybe a little bit with Sand Attack, but I think we're fine. I am a little afraid that 7 minutes for all of Route 25 and Bill may be a little long. I don't love that kind of timestamp there, being at 48 minutes in and now finally getting to Misty's gym. But, you know, for now, we'll sort of take it. We'll sort of kind of accept blindly, I think, a little bit based off of some of those factors that we keep kind of coming back to. But Psyduck is not super effective, but also doesn't have anything super effective against them. So really at this point, we are just kind of holding on to the brute force of being levels above every Pokemon that we come across. Although here at this gym, I do think we're kind of lower, maybe. Maybe we're a little bit on par, but I feel like we're a little low in level for this particular fight. Now, I started making a small mistake here of using Water Gun just because of A, stab, but I was also thinking that like special would be good to have since they keep boosting their defense. I actually think that Scratch probably still would have done us stronger and better just because it would have been physical. Yeah, going against the defense, but I don't know. I think that the type effectiveness there was very strange, but we eked it out. And so far, that's kind of the most that you can really ask of any Pokemon when you're doing a solo challenge. We are also, as always, showcasing one of my favorite sections of the game, SS and picking up the move of Body Slam, a solid move for any trainer for almost every Pokemon within this game. Almost every Pokemon in that Pokedex can learn that move. That might be a strong and bold statement that might not be accurate, but it feels true so far, so I'm going to stick to my word. And if I'm wrong, that is one thing that you can leave out of the comments. Just let me have this one. Now, we are going to go up to the next rival fight so that we can go talk to the captain who feels a little seasick. And let me tell you, I'm feeling that. I understand his pain. This episode's coming out a little late after having no episode last week. I got super sick. I got a double ear infection and just in like a lot of pain and feeling awful and feeling dreadful. Couldn't hear out of my left ear like at all. So, you know, now we're kind of back in action. So I know what it's like for that captain to kind of suddenly have clarity and feel better. And speaking of some clarity, there is our clarity of just the fact that Surge continues to be bad. He's super effective against us, and What's he got? Nothing. Okay. We have scooted forward. I feel like a pretty decent amount of time to get from Vermilion all the way up to Cerulean, cut across into the Rock Tunnel, go through all of Rock Tunnel, and then get to Celadon. To get to this part right here, right now, feels pretty good. You know, some Pokemon have that slow start in the beginning, and then they never really make up that ground. But I do feel like we're starting to get a little bit faster. We're at a part where I feel like we've got a lot of fights coming up that should go our way pretty easily. Although we are in a very dangerous territory, I've got a lot of moves that are effective against the Pokemon in this gym because of the dual typing with Poison, right? The Dig move will really help with that. But we are facing a large issue with the fact that they are super effective against me, for sure. Any grass move is pretty much instant death for me. At this point, I've also recognized that I made one mistake. I got into the fight without really thinking about it. So I take the reset and I walk away. You see, I forgot that I had to pick up one more move before we could do this gym. And that is that I have to go to the top of the Celadon supermarket or mall or whatever this thing is technically called. And I don't need to pick up every single one of these items. I just do for whatever reason. But the big thing here is that if you buy a fresh water and then you give that drink to this small child, she'll give you the TM for Ice Beam. And let me tell you, Ice Beam is such a good move. I feel like it's always been a good move and it's always going to be a good move, but it just feels like here and now especially. Oh, I'm loving this. Also, I don't think we've really talked about it yet, but I am running a rest set right now. I am running a learn set that includes the move of rest. I got rid of confusion because it's not a very strong move. So I felt like we didn't really need to keep it. We can't learn psychic. So like, let's just move forward, right? We're keeping dig, which is good because our physical attack is pretty solid right now. And of course, bubble beam, which would be good for any other gym, basically, other than this one. But that doesn't matter because, again, we have Ice Beam. Oop. Well, the Paralyze was bad. This is a tough part, right? Because I think that when you look at it, Tangela is the only monotype grass in Gen 1. So, therefore, you kind of need Ice Beam just to be able to get through that initial fight. And then I learned my lesson. Well, kind of. But I did learn the lesson, right? Which is that Dig is actually going to be better for the other two Pokemon. Even though it shows as not being a higher number. Like, I don't know why the stat doesn't change. You don't see it go up the way the Ice Beam does. But it is super effective against Poison type. So Dig for sure is better. And also, again, our physical attack is higher than our special. So after a couple of trial and error and kind of getting a little lucky on certain moves, we defeat Erica and we move on. The rival in this portion of the game, this is something that I mention in almost every video. I don't think we've ever seen a problem in this fight. I don't think we will anytime soon. The only exception might be like a Weedle, you know, where we were having to use all those X attacks and stuff like that. But I really don't think that any regular run with the actual rule set has ever struggled within that fight. So we do defeat all of Pokemon Tower. That's another thing where it goes by very easily, very quickly with the move of Dig. Not a lot to show there, so then we're going to move on to Koga. Koga is actually frequently quite a problem. And a large portion of that is because his level jump is pretty significant. Starts at level 44, ends at level 50, and with a fully evolved Pokemon. They're all bugs, by the way. This is not really a poison gym. I mean, I guess it is. They all have the secondary typing of poison, which means that Dig should be more than enough. But one of the big problems is just the fact that the special is weirdly not even all that impressive, I would argue, for the Venonats. But as we saw when I went through this game with a Venonat, we know that it's a little finicky, right? When you look at those numbers, it's like, yeah, man, their special is way lower than mine, but Psychic is still just a really devastating move. It doesn't matter if you're getting stab or not, that move is just strong. It's just so kind of OP in Gen 1 specifically. And so we're kind of using all the tricks in the book here. There's a weird moment here where I did that. I have rest. I probably should have just used it, because I could have gotten fully healed and come out of that fight, maybe would still have health. I don't know. That feels like a little bit of a misplay, but I'm also not used to running a learn set that has that move in it. I'm not used to taking the time out to heal. A lot of the times I don't like using it because if I'm a weaker Pokemon, I run the risk of going to sleep to heal up, but then getting out of my sleep either right back where I started or dead and needing to reset. But like then when I've got the stronger Pokemon, I typically don't need rest. So I'm just like, give me the moves that are gonna hit. You know, just give me the strength, give me those hard-hitting moves. Let me just one-shot everything within eyesight. So rest is not typically my kind of gameplay. I know that Scott really loves using rest a lot. I feel like it's a very big part of his plan and his scheme effectively. And considering you go to sleep for so long, I am shocked sometimes at the overall times that guy can pull in. But, you know, I'm not at that level yet. So, you know, we're just sort of, and to some extent, we're still in a very exploratory phase. Yeah, we're more than halfway through the year at this point, but there's still a lot to learn. There's still a lot to be seen. So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with fighting the dojo? Because you'll never shine if you don't glow. And the only way to learn is by playing. And the only way to play is by beginning. And the only way to begin is by beginning. So I butchered that a little bit. I messed that up right as I got to the end of it. I went, oh no, I went for the wrong word. Whatever. Anyway, that's a little dropout reference. If you're a Game Changer fan, let me know if you've been here the whole time, because I love that. Now we move on to Silphco. We have effectively leveled up a decent amount. We've done some extra little leveling both at the dojo and here within the tower. We've picked up some crucial items. We've made our way through the pathing that makes sense, both for experience and also just some of the way of making a clear path to the healing station between there and here, actually. And so then, therefore, we get to the final Pokemon on the Rivals team. And right now, I think we're doing okay, but it's a little scary. I'm 15 levels above it, and I was not doing it. Or rather, I mean, I did do it, but do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's just the concept of it wasn't hitting and doing a lot of damage. I mean, Ice Beam against a water type, I probably should have known that part. But that was just sort of, I don't know if it was like a panic or just going, let's just try it. Let's just see what we can do here. Two Pokemon of the same type going up against one another is a weird little thing. I mean, it's a lot like, you know, going up against Misty earlier. There's a lot of like, I don't know, maybe use the special move. I don't know. Is the physical move really going to do that much more? Well, it did. So hopefully that'll be helpful in the future, in the long run. I don't know. Either way, we are on to Giovanni here. And so far, really the only problem that I think he could give us is with that Persian. But luckily the Persian is a 2-hit. And speaking of 2-hit, so is Nidoqueen, as it also 2-hits me. Well, like, not like in a way where I die, but it used double kick. Is this anything? Is this thing on? Okay. We're moving on. One thing that I think is fun, though, is that now that we have gotten through Sylph, I'd like you to notice the time right now, 2:08. Earlier, I was talking about Pokemon that have like a really long beginning of the game and then never break free of that pacing. And then at one point I said, well, we're picking up speed a little bit. Well, now we're picking up speed as if we are a roller coaster that has just hit the top of the very first hill. It is all about to be just a straight shot from here. Effectively. Close enough. Because we got through Silphco, we got through Sabrina in one try, no issues. And then we go backwards, back to Koga. Koga gave us a little bit of trouble earlier. But at this point, we're level 56 between all of these escapades that we've kind of gotten ourselves into. And even though Dig didn't really do nearly enough, they actually throw by going for Toxic instead of just going for damage against Psyduck. I really feel like they kind of dropped the ball there. Now, Cinnabar Island is hellish on the eyes, so I always just show just the Blaine fight. And the good news is that today we have Psyduck, a water type, it knows Surf, and it does need a 2-hit everything just because it's a special type, and our special's a little low. But there you have it. That is the 7th badge. Did you see that? Like, within, what, 2 minutes worth of footage? Yeah, there's obviously some cuts from where I, went into like the Pokemon Mansion and stuff like that. But 8 minutes for 3 badges? That feels so quick. And honestly, when you really kind of break down everything here, it gets a little close. Persian gets us really dangerously close to death. And I do believe that the stereotypical guard spec. What? Okay, that's one of those rare moments of a blooper is too funny to cut. That was something. I don't know what happened with my brain, but it kind of shut off for a split second. I don't know. But yes, the guard spec that he uses there, I think is how he throws that fight. Because Nidoqueen could have easily killed me. I had 14 health. All I had to do was breathe. And that Psyduck was done. But either way, that one is now done and dusted. That's a little over 8 minutes for 4 badges. That's basically a badge every 2 minutes. That is insane on the time stamp or time standpoint. Something. Now, we have made it through this team with full health. And now we're facing an issue. Because I'm using Ice Beam, even though it's not very good. But it's because the rival kept using moves to increase the defense. This is the age-old problem for these water types. We're seeing a lot of moves that are physical, that do a lot of damage, that could be really beneficial, but they keep boosting their defense. And so then we go for special, but they already have pretty solid special. So we're just kind of, nothing gained, nothing ventured, or nothing something. There's nothing. It's just nothing. Nothing's happening. Either way, we have... Okay, either way is a thing that I say either way too much. But we have made it back to Vaporeon a second time with perfect health. There's just so much second guessing and kind of unsuredness here for me. Now I'm going for Surf, which has the stab bonus here, but wow, that acid armor was a throw and a half. That should have been another loss for me, another reset, but okay, I'll take it. Now, we've talked before about how a lot of these Pokemon, someday I will do a second run of. Psyduck is a Pokemon that we are definitely going to have to, because the timestamp for today is going to have a little asterisk next to it, because I made a mistake while filming. You see, I took a phone call, and I could have sworn I paused the timer. I could have sworn I paused the game, and I did neither. And so this is even me cutting it down just enough to cover this sort of speech, to say that I sat there for over 5 minutes before I jumped back in, and then I reset the game. And so I thought, oh God, how long was I on that call? I thought it was way more than 5 minutes. I thought it was about 10. I remember seeing at some point recently 2 hours and 12 minutes. So I do something dumb, which is just set it to 212. And then I go, what was the reset? I couldn't remember if I had reset it twice while fixing the number. I was kind of a mess. And so I took away one of my resets illegally and I changed my time to something that does not match. It's about 5-ish minutes too long. It's like 5 or 7. I can't remember. So it's somewhere in that range. I try to do the math later on. And it's not quite coming to me at this point. Now that I'm seeing it in real time, it kind of doesn't really matter. But either way, there's a big caveat and a big asterisk, and it's kind of like hey, you messed with the sanctity of the run, so you're gonna have to do it again, which is fine. I'm totally game to play with Psyduck again. I do think that we can do better with him, despite some of the problems that we're seeing even right now, which is simply fighting against Lorelei is really tough. Now, at first I was not 100% certain that I even saved the game before going against Lorelei, so I did take a blackout. It could have been another reset, so maybe we're 2 resets or 2 faults or whatever down on where we should be, but I'm just gonna let it go. I'm just gonna give myself the benefit of the doubt. Again, I was sick last week and I was still in the process of getting over it. I mean, if I'm honest, I still can't hear perfectly out of my left ear. That ear is still at about 50%. So, we're just going to have to kind of take it or leave it. And speaking of taking it, I had to, of course, spend a good amount of time before we got into these first 2 fights here doing that typical kind of gameplay thing that I do, which is drop off all of the Pokemon that are not Psyduck. And then I have to go get some full restores, make sure that we've got one for every single, fight that we go into. And then I used all of my rare candies and, using each one of those and then also stopping the evolution animation every time takes a hot minute. But at 220 asterisk, we have made it to the back half of this fight with Lorelei, and it's kind of surprising to me. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I've reserved rest on this learn set. And I feel like this fight alone vindicated my choice to use a move that is utility, I guess is maybe the best way to describe this move, at least in this particular fight. I am in a fight where nothing that they have is really super effective against me, but again, it's that typical thing of they just hit harder. And so I got down to pretty low health, but I knew that Jinx was really not going to be a problem. So the rest was what we needed. And if I had not healed, there's like 4 or 5 different moves back there that would have ended the run. Or not the run, but that particular round, rather, with Lorelei. So, sometimes it's just, you got to take the moves that you don't think you're ever going to use. Now, we are using Surf, though, and that is a move that we are expecting to use and see, and because of it, God, Bruno, you are sometimes, in fact, most of the times, you are on the Surge level of mediocrity, of failure, of, I don't know, getting dunked on every week by me and by many other content creators. You should be ashamed of yourself. Now, we are on to Agatha. Agatha is one of the 2 trainers here in particular that can just be brutal. It's not common, I think, so far, for both Agatha and Lance to be a problem for a Pokemon. Usually it's one or the other. Luckily, in today's case, everyone except for Golbat on her team was able to be hit by Dig. And the good news about Golbat is that Ice Beam is also super effective. And so Agatha is no more. Agatha is in agony. Now we get to move on to Lance, and we got lucky big time. That freeze was crucial for honestly just a multitude of reasons. It gives us an opportunity to heal without taking any damage during that sleeping effect that, runs out after 2 turns. But it means that I can heal up and then I can just sort of chip away very gently because he also uses a healing item. And so we get to just sort of take that out. That Gyarados is such a pain. And honestly, the Aerodactyl is frequently a major problem too, just because it is so fast. And there was no way I was making it with more speed there, but we didn't need it when it came to Dragonite. We were still faster, and my God, it feels good to just one and done Lance. And now we are on to the final time going up against our rival, this time as the champion, this time with the better move set that he has of really any of the fights. We have 3 major problems on this team. We have Exeggutor, we have Magneton, and then we have Vaporeon. Now, Exeggutor and Magneton are the same type of problems that you've seen throughout this entire run. This is a base level Pokemon, or base evolution Pokemon, and it's water type. So, of course, something that has the ability to hit much harder, much earlier in the game, or at a lower level, technically, right? Means that I have to be doing better to get out of their grasp, because if they use a single grass move, boy, I'm done. But luckily, we do take 1 reset. Okay, fine, I'll take it. We should be at 13 or 14 at this point. But that is neither here nor there. What is here and present danger-ish is this Exeggutor. Now, luckily for us, it does not know any other grass type moves other than Leech Seed. But luckily it does not, so it's not exactly a free setup for re-healing and getting out of there, but it does help out a lot. And so we can get to Vaporeon at a little under half health and still have to use the move. But at this point, Vaporeon's learn set is not really great. It's mostly just going to have to use Aurora Beam and Hydro Pump to really be able to do anything of lasting sustenance, I guess, or whatever. Substance. Sustenance is for food. But we are here at this final fight, and we are both chipping away at each other. We're both using, potions on his side, rest on my side. We both don't really want to concede this. And I just feel like we've hit the same problem as before of none of these moves are really all that effective. We are having the Leech Seed issue, but it doesn't matter. Psyduck, this wonderful little dumb headache, this headache having boy, has done it. And so therefore we make it to the end with 2 hours, 26 minutes, probably technically maybe 2:35, maybe 2:38, somewhere in there, I'm sure. And then with 12 resets, so like 13 or 14. So yeah, those aren't world champion records, so we're going to have to fix that at some point. But I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and my narrating still a little loopy from, medication and illness and everything like that. I hope that what I said today makes sense. And if it doesn't, you can just imagine that Psyduck used confusion. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week for another solo challenge in Pokemon Yellow.